All right, YouTube, Gary Johnson is still riding high. He's creeping upwards to that double-digit threshold on the RCP. There are already some polls showing him at like 10, 11, 12 points. Those, you can't take individual polls seriously. You have to look at general movement and an aggregate. This was a continuous problem in 2012. People looked at one polling firm's own rolling average or one single poll and they extrapolated from that, oh, Mitt Romney's competitive in these states, maybe he can still win. Of course, it was never actually possible for that to happen. The aggregate showed Obama was handily ahead in most of these swing states. He was going to be reelected. It was evident more than a month before the election actually happened. And I had posts at the time, if you look back through my videos, stating exactly that. It was clear who was going to win long before the election wrapped up. But Gary Johnson now is approaching the double digits in the RCP, in the average, in the Real Clear Politics aggregate, which is something that no third-party sort of candidate has managed to do in recent living memory within this country. The last time that the libertarian movement, I don't mean party, I mean movement at large, the term itself, gained notoriety was Ron Paul. Of course, he averaged between 10 and 15%, but just within the Republican Party before getting shafted at the convention. This pissed a lot of people off and helped to lead to Mitt Romney losing, by the way. Then, thereafter, of course, Gary Johnson has taken the reins. He's the most notable libertarian, even if he is softer on libertarianism, more mediocre at some point, some people would say. Austin Peterson, he has his own problems, McAfee and all of these others. Gary Johnson's more of a pragmatist. No, he's not a purist libertarian. By the way, I'm fine with this fact. I disagree with him on a few major issues, especially on the border. I do not believe that the libertarian movement, or the classical liberal movement, as you may term it, is based on that as such an undying principle that it has to be universally enforced that all borders should be open and we should essentially be stateless. I don't believe in the abolition of nation states. I believe in the tempering of government power, the rescission of most of our laws, the reduction of our budgets to a level that you probably would think quite drastic. That being said, no, I don't think the state needs to be abolished. I don't think that borders should be completely porous, because this is a good way for your little libertarian experiment to fail. I think we need to be pragmatic, not just idealistic. I think that ideals have to include at least a rudiment of pragmatism, and I don't have a problem with the concept that there would be border control. I had one so-called libertarian, who was actually just an anarchist, rant at me for 30 or 40 different comments on one of my older videos on this very topic. Oh, you're not a libertarian if you believe in border control. That makes no sense whatsoever. It just, I'm talking about a platform that is essentially, yeah, we want more individual liberty. The government shouldn't be really telling anybody what to do. Unless there's a victim, there's no crime. We do need to end the drug war. We do need to end interventionism. We do need a substantial reduction in government authority and spending all the way around. That doesn't mean that I support the abolition of the concept of a nation state. But Gary Johnson isn't having any real problems right now, because what he's managed to do is steal virtually all of the younger voters from Hillary Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton never had a substantial share of the young voters. Most of them liked Bernie Sanders. But what has happened? Sanders didn't win. Sanders was called a sellout by many of his own fans for even endorsing Hillary, and now we have the DNC leaks. This unholy triplicate, I think, is going to continue the surge of younger, sort of under 35 voters out of the Democratic Party, which really leaves it dying in a heap, because that's a demographic they can't afford to lose with. The Democratic Party cannot afford to hemorrhage the youth vote and still win the election. It's just not possible. There's no other sort of compilation of different demographics that they can piece together that gets them over the threshold that they need, especially when they've also lost a substantial minority, at least, of the business Democrats. The Republicans are riding high. The Libertarians are riding high. It's the Democratic Party right now that is disunified, weak, anemic, and essentially destroying itself. The collusion between the DNC and Hillary has really sealed the deal as far as the Democratic Party almost certainly losing this election. Good riddance, by the way. We don't need, I said early on, when Jeb got in, Hillary got in, said no more Bushes, no more Clintons. Well, the Bushes lost. They've been purged from the Republican Party entirely. They won't even endorse the Republican candidate. The Bushes are gone. Permanently, by the way, if Trump wins. Trump loses, they may come back and say, hey, you love us now? Hey, we told you he'd lose. And they'll spend money trying to defeat him, of course. But largely, the old guard neocons have been forced entirely out of the Republican Party to the point where Trump is now going to apparently design super PACs to purge them further to get rid of people who personally stood in his way after he had already clinched the nomination. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party is fighting largely itself. Clinton can get up on stage and attack Trump all day, but I mean, at the end of the day, what she really needs to do is focus on bringing Bernie Sanders fans and Elizabeth Warren sort of progressives back into the Democratic fold. And she hasn't done that. She chose a VP who is anything but likely to help her accomplish that. She has now refused to respond to the DNC leaks. Couldn't be going worse. Gary Johnson is just siphoning all those younger voters up like a sponge. Only a minority of them are actually voting for Trump out of wrath towards the Democratic Party. And that's all Trump needs. He only needs a very slim proportion of these Democrats to jump ship to him in order to win the election. Gary Johnson, though, he's massively increasing the libertarian roles by saying, hey, oh, there's another way. You don't like war. You don't like the drug war. Hey, I'm more progressive on these things than Hillary will ever be. And he's gobbling those people up. The thing is, once he gets into the double digits, if he hits that critical mass, he will be seen by more and more people as viable, and you may see more people jump ship to him. I think he will inevitably reabsorb some of Jill Stein's support as well, as people become more accustomed to the Libertarian Party's sort of ideals on the issue. No, but I mean, I don't have a problem with the fact that he's a pragmatic libertarian. In fact, that is more appropriate for the times right now. Attempting to take a full the state is inept, so we should basically have just anarcho-capitalism, sort of libertarian ethos, as opposed to classical liberalism. Reform the system. No, we don't abolish the borders. We don't abolish all taxes. We see them as a necessary evil. We don't let people run around with nuclear weapons, but, I mean, nobody gives a fuck if they have so-called assault rifles. Don't give a fuck about gay marriage. Do whatever you want. Smoke dope all day if you want to. Just don't ask for us to fund incarceration for these things. A classical liberal or a more pragmatic libertarian response to what's going on right now will allow the Libertarian Party to keep growing. If you put some fanatic at the helm who really is going to sit there on a debate stage with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and say, yeah, we should just basically get rid of the state, or we should have a state, but it won't really have a purpose. Borders, who fucking cares about borders? Just smoke more weed. If you put somebody like that on the debate stage in the name of libertarianism, you will never see libertarian growth again. The party will die off completely. By having a pragmatist up there who can actually play it up to independent voters, especially younger independent voters, to people who have sort of been disenfranchised by the Republicans and the Democrats, you actually stand a fighting chance of significant growth of the Libertarian Party to the point at which it becomes more or less a viable movement. So all these people talking about, oh, Gary Johnson says this and does that, so he's not a real libertarian. The whole real libertarian thing is a no true Scotsman argument. Neither he nor anybody else with any sense is going to give a fuck about such an argument. You can debate all day over how pure you have to be in your libertarian ethics in order to be considered a libertarian. Doesn't matter. The average American is a classical liberal. The average American is not an anarchist. They're not an anarcho-capitalist. They're not interested in having complete free movement across all borders to the point at which the very concept of a nation state is essentially erased. They're not interested in these things, especially not right now. But what we do generally want is massive rescission in taxes, no more police state, tired of foreign interventionism. We really want to return to an actual free market because it's been some time since we've had one. You clear these things up, back up off the moral laws, rescind more gun control, you get things moving in the right direction, and it will continue. We'll hit a boom time, which will be exceptionally prosperous. The libertarian movement will end up becoming the main party. the Democrats and Republicans will be fighting it out for second place, and then you no longer have any problems. You reform the system mildly at first, then you implement additional reforms over time to continue scaling back the pressure the government puts on our markets, the pressure that our government puts really in strain on our alliances with other nations by constantly waging war in the name of oil, or this terrorism nonsense that it continuously talks about, even though largely, if we had left this region alone, a lot of those groups wouldn't have existed to begin with. Like, we shouldn't have attacked Saddam. We should have let him keep killing terrorists. Trump is right about that, by the way. We shouldn't be attacking Assad's forces. We shouldn't be backing the Free Syrian Army. We should be backing Bashar al-Assad. Dictator? Okay, yeah, dictator-like, kinda. Authoritarian democracy? Yeah, I understand. So's Turkey. They're still in NATO. Look at what Erdogan's doing right now. And supposedly they're like our best friend. Obama said, oh, this coup is terrible. So, let's get real and focus on mild reform at first. For instance, there is now the will in the population to get rid of the drug war. There's plenty of will in the population to stop all the stupid foreign interventionism. Most people are becoming increasingly concerned about the police state and the domestic surveillance apparatus. People are also very concerned that they're being taxed too much. Libertarian Party can outflank the Republicans and Democrats on all of these issues. Do that, and you have viability. Going forward into the next election cycle, I'd be surprised if the Libertarian Party wasn't about even with the other two mainstream parties. And the Libertarian Party, let's face it, is essentially already at the threshold to be a mainstream party. It's closing in on that double-digit mark, at which you can't really say that it's got a limited appeal anymore. You're talking about tens of millions of people. It's not a tiny fringe movement anymore. That's about all. Peace out.